Hello, everybody. It's April 15th, 2020. We're experiencing the pandemic across the United States, and many people are saying this is going to cause a real estate market crash. Well, I'm one of the top REO asset managers in the country during the last mortgage crisis, an appraiser for over 3 decades, a broker over 3 decades, an investor over 3 decades, and one of the highly credentialed real estate educators in the country. So I would be considered probably the person you should listen to. So that's why right now you should like or subscribe my channel, because if you listen to amateurs, you're going to get amateur outcomes. If you listen to a professional and it's not costing you anything, it would be a good thing to do. Well, let me talk about the real estate crash they say is coming. There'll be a little correction, but let me explain that, and you should understand this. The last, from the last 3 weeks until 7 years ago, the market was overheated in many areas of the country, and many segments of the real estate market were overheated. Grant Cardone, for instance, has been buying apartment complexes, mostly throughout the east of the United States. He's not a real estate expert. He's an expert salesperson, yes, because he got many people to come in and invest their money into buying apartment complexes. If you collect enough money, you can get somebody to sell an apartment complex in the last 5, 7 years. When the market was overheated, cap rates were historically low, which means that properties were being bought for more than they were worth, basically, because the return on investment was so low. So no matter who you are, if you have a great marketing skill and can collect enough money from enough people and have a large enough pool of money, you can go find somebody that, even if it's their best property, would sell it because they're saying, he's going to give me that for that. I love that property, but I'm selling it. Grant Cardone also goes on to say, you know, my properties are irreplaceable. That's the biggest fallacy in the world. Nearly every single piece of property is irreplaceable. It all comes down to investment potential. Now, the coming market crash, we got to think about a few things here. Prior to 3 or 4 weeks ago, refinance and mortgage rates were at nearly an all-time low. Mortgage applications were nearly at an all-time high. Properties were moving. People were refinancing. And unemployment was historically low. The reason rates went up at that time was because there were so many applications. Lenders could not keep up with the amount of applications. It wasn't anything to do with the pandemic that slowed down the mortgage applications. Then the pandemic comes. So we have this great increase of unemployment. Well, people right now, I mean, we're at February 15th, and people are busting at the seams to get back to work. And that's going to happen. As fast as this thing arrived on us, it will disappear or decrease, and the economy will come back again. And people will want to make up for lost ground. Yes, there's going to be some industries that's going to take a while. The airline, the travel, yes, there's going to be certain industries that are going, but there's other, with things that had decreased, other things that increased. So there's going to be lots of opportunity out there. So A, we've got historical low interest rates. B, we've got people that are chomping at the bit to get back into the workplace, and most of them will. And C, the government is infusing so much money into the economy right now. Never before has the government, in such a short time, infused so much funding and monetary enablement into the economy at any one time. This is all going to flow. I mean, the money's not good just sitting in a warehouse. It needs to circulate. So when it circulates, whether it be Main Street, back roads, or Wall Street, it's circulating. and it will keep going. The faster it changes hands and circulates, the better, and the economy will come back. Now, where there might be some real estate effects is certain areas where, you know, that are really industry specific or have a concentration. Like, around, I don't know, the Carnival Cruise Line, if there's a segments around that, it's going to have an influence. Boeing is going to have an influence on the local housing. So you might have some areas like that. As far as the hotels, yes, like Ben Mallah on here, he has hotels. Well, in Florida, hotels, the season basically got closed down. So they're going to have to ride that out. Here's other things that will prevent a real estate crisis. This happened to everybody throughout the United States. All hotels are being hit. All apartments are being hit. More so maybe for apartments in New York, but they have rent control and that stabilization. So there's a longer process by which, you and other rent rules in order to get people in and get people out anyways. So there's a lot of factors besides the virus that's going to influence the real estate market. When you're looking at this in the grand scheme of things, you have a nation that has experienced a decline across the board. So all these banks aren't going to go jump in and say, oh, we really want all these hotels back. No, banks do not want the properties back. So, and just because one hotel is doing bad, usually they would take it back, if it's a specifically operator incident or, the funds just are. But when you have every hotel's got nearly a vacancy rate of nearly 70 something percent now, well, that's the norm right now. So all these lenders aren't going to jump in and say, oh yeah, I think we're going to foreclose on every hotel in the country. No, 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 no. Apartment complexes, yes, like Grant Cardone, got his apartment complexes in the last 5 years. Overheated market. People that are professionals would start coming in now and looking for situations like similar to Grant Cardone, where they have interest-only loans on some properties. Values might come down. Bank will say, oh, your loan to value doesn't meet the criteria of the mortgage anymore. Either bring in some more capital or pay, and pay it down. Or some of these short-term commercial mortgages are 3, 5, or 10 years. So they got to be renewed. And when it's only interest only, your principal remains the same. So you borrowed 10 million to begin with, you owe 10 million at the renewal. So when it comes to that, if the property has decreased, your loan to value isn't correct anymore. The lender says, you know what? We want more money from you. And if you're struggling to begin with, you don't have another, 10% or 20% to put in the pool at this point. So then that's when it gets in trouble. That's when the experienced investors come in. And the banks already knows who the experienced investors are because they're working with them too. And when they see one person that operates a bunch of apartments have a loan to value of nearly 50% and another one that has 90% with a correction, well, they talk. And the bank might come back and they don't want the property back, so they're trying to see what they can do. And the experienced investor with a real low LTV will come in and sometimes acquire that, and they're helping the bank out, which helps their future relationship. Plus, they're getting a good deal, right? So these are things you got to consider. let's just recap here quick. And like or subscribe if you want the real estate knowledge. I mean, I've been through this for nearly 4 decades, top REO asset manager in the country, which means for one of the largest banks, I was a top 1 percentile as far as helping them with their foreclosures. Every every month, if you go on these auction sites, there's usually some properties on there where I help the bank determine what to sell them for. And I also, not the same properties, but people contact me to ask me what to bid on properties. I've appraised over 10,000 properties throughout my career, sold hundreds, been an investor for nearly 3 decades. So I don't have the short viewpoint. I have the long ranging viewpoint backed with experience. But let's recap here quick. We've had lowest interest rates in history. A president that's experienced default himself and will do whatever he can to prevent that from being a nationwide epidemic. We have an economy that's busting to get back and a strong underlying economy. And there's going to be just as many opportunities coming out of this pandemic as there's been a damage on certain industries. So, certain industries are definitely going to get hit and die, but there's going to be new emerging ones from this pandemic. So that's going to probably be a wash. So we should be in good shape if people maintain what they have and keep their affairs in order. I mean, if you just go out and give up, it's not going to work. But it's going to be a bright future, I think. We're not going to go into the same crashes like we did that were somewhat caused by the banks in 2007, 2008, because they gave risky mortgages, then they were not good in their forbearance efforts. They should have just let people stay in the house as long as they maintained it. But when you foreclosed on one, that brought the values down in the neighborhood. Then that caused another foreclosure, and it just was like a game of dominoes. So it was sort of like self-inflicted by the banks with too many foreclosures on the market at the same time. Banks do not want the properties back. Banks do not want the properties back. And that goes for hotels, apartments, or single-family houses. So there's going to be a different mindset to this housing and commercial property impact by the economy than last. Like or subscribe. Thanks. Bye.